Welcome to Hunters and Unicorns, the movers and shakers. We bring you the big moves from the people that are shaking the industry. I'm Simon Kutis and I'm joined by my co-host Ollie Kune.
Welcome back to the show, everyone.
And it's an absolute pleasure to be joined by Graham Moreno. Graham, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks guys. It's nice to be back.
Oh, it's lovely to have you back on the show, mate. Really looking forward to this one again.
Very exciting to have you back on the show, Graham. You have been on the show before, and we did invest a lot of time going through your amazing journey, kind of from start to right up to Grafana Labs. But you've recently just taken a VP of worldwide sales at Codeium, and we're really excited to talk to you about this journey, this move, and also this amazing organization that you've recently joined. So tell us a little bit about Codeium and what you guys are up to.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be back. Excited for the conversation. So Codeium is an AI-powered developer toolkit. And where we started our journey is around autocomplete, so making developers faster and more efficient. Every developer using Codeium on average produces 46% more code. We also do chat, and that's not to say like a chat GPT, but chat specific for developers. And specifically, we're seeing a lot of value around that with onboarding, where the teams using Codeium are onboarding developers anywhere from 40 to 70% faster than they did previously. And then finally, focus as well on personalization. So having a system that's actually able to get in and get to know the nuances of a specific code base. So rather than giving general suggestions or general recommendations from the internet, we're actually able to take all of the context of a given code base into account when working with a team. And I think for me, it was those components, this really differentiated view on the right way to provide value to developers using AI that got me really excited. Obviously, generative AI is a really hot space and there's a lot of noise around it right now. And it's a buzzword we're all hearing a lot about. And so I think for me, really getting to understand how the technology was differentiated, how it is not just going to add value, but how we can quantify it. Because I think one of the things that we're seeing right now is for any business that's looking at investing in AI, the hardest thing to do is to be able to tie whatever the value is directly back to the business, whether that's more revenue, better developer productivity, whatever that looks like. And for me, just hearing how Codeium answered that and getting to know the team over the course of a year or so prior to joining was really what made it an easy decision for me. And I'm happy to talk more about that. I think another thing that's unique about how we're approaching the problem is that we have a hybrid model. We do work with SaaS, but the reality is that there's a lot of companies in defense, in aerospace, and finance, and certainly healthcare that do not necessarily want to send their code, the ultimate solid gold of their IP, into a SaaS service right now. And the ability to work with customers where they are and even run in air-gapped environments for us has been hugely differentiating early on. So a lot more to say there, obviously, but really, really excited to be at Codeium today.
So obviously, Graham, we speak on a regular basis and you weren't actively looking to leave Grafana. But what was the process in making the decision to actually leave Grafana Labs?
Yeah, I mean, I think I ended up being in kind of a fortunate position where, to your point, I really wasn't looking. I also, about a year ago, one of my mentors, someone that you both obviously know well, reached out and said, "Hey, I'm involved in this company. We love the founders, we love the tech, but they're very early. And I don't have a ton of experience being quite that early, but you've obviously been at Grafana. I founded a company previously with someone else. And so maybe you could help them out and get to know the team a little bit and just see where you can add value." And so I ended up getting to engage with Varun, who's our CEO, for about 10 months before joining. And I think that made it easier because I got to see the initial success they had. They got to a couple $1 million in largely founder-driven revenue in 6 months and got to start to hear some of the feedback from customers and users. And one of the really interesting things about Codeium is because of how expensive it is to serve LLMs and large AI models, most companies don't have free tiers. But Codeium actually has an ML infrastructure optimization background as far as where our founding team came from and where a lot of our early engineers came from. So we have this free user base, which is over 500,000 users, that allows us to get way more feedback than a normal company like this, because anytime that we're looking at doing something new or we want to get feedback on a product release, rather than having to have that be in beta for 6 months or to release it to a small number of people, we're able to have 500,000 engineers use it within a couple of hours. which is really amazing. And so I think for me, getting to know the team, getting to see all the progress on the revenue side, and getting to see the kind of novel approach they've taken to being able to provide users with a lot of value really quickly got me excited. And it was funny because the first time it came up about me coming on board, I said no, I wasn't looking. It was similar actually to when I was leaving Mongo to go to Grafana. But I think over a series of months of conversations with Varun, I ultimately realized that as much as I never thought I would leave Grafana, prior to there being some kind of outcome, and Grafana is a brilliant company, I was too excited about what Codeium was doing to not join. And it ultimately became one of those things where it felt like it was a decision where if I hadn't made it, I'd have been looking over the fence wondering if I had. And usually once you're there mentally, right, it's the right thing to do.
It is a difficult situation to leave something you loved, then join something kind of new. It is always kind of challenging, but at the same time, there are some kind of key criteria that are important when you are assessing a new opportunity. You've started to kind of allude to some of those things, but talk to us a little bit about your interpretation of what product market fit is and how important that is as part of your decision process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think at a really high level, right? Like when I think about making a move, I'm looking at the technology, I'm looking at the team around it, I'm looking at the potential market opportunity, and then where the go-to-market organization specifically is today. And I was blown away by the tech, and not just talking to the founders, but like going onto webs like G2 and seeing the product reviews and then seeing all of this feedback from both free users and paying customers. And I think one of the things that is super important, and we've seen this, whether it's with databases or observability or whatever it might be, big data is not just a system being powerful, but how easily usable it is and to how many people it's valuable. And I thought it was incredible early on how much Codeium focused on that. So I was very excited to see this emphasis on usability and making it so that once an organization is using Codeium, it's very easy for there to be like a viral effect in the sense that people get value quickly. It's easy to spin up. We have an analytics dashboard that right when you sign in, you can see the number of hours saved, the amount of code being generated. You can even tie that back to revenue on a team by team basis or like cost of developers. And so I thought that was interesting because something that I heard a lot from other people just talking about AI was that there's all this enthusiasm about it, but it was challenging for companies to tie that directly to business value. And so I thought the approach to that, both from an ROI perspective and a technical perspective, was really great. The founders are brilliant. Like the whole team is amazing, but I think in particular, if you're going to go early, it's important to feel really excited about how you're going to work with the team. And I thought that the approach to building a generational company, both via great tech and an amazing go-to-market organization, was really exciting. It's super aligned with how I wanted to think about it. And I think the other piece is what is the market opportunity? And I think right now, anyone that tells you they know the exact market opportunity of AI is probably taking a little bit of a guess, but it's massive, right? And I think the other piece that was exciting to me, and I'm afraid I'm really only going to be able to allude to some of this stuff, but is the roadmap. I don't think anyone who's come from a Grafana or come from a Mongo wants to go sell a point solution. And I think what we have coming down the line in the next 6 months got me really excited and kind of believing deeply that what we're going to build here has the opportunity to be an AI platform that doesn't just change how developers work and add a ton of value to businesses, but also has the opportunity ultimately to help take some really big paradigm shifts and drive them forward in terms of what's even possible in the space of LLMs. And then, I mean, the final thing to call out, and this isn't news to you guys, but I think when I look at making a market, and like I lived this at Mongo with databases, I lived it with Grafana with observability, the three ways companies win or lose is technology, go to market, and then distribution. And anytime you're a small company and you're competing with the Oracle, Microsoft, IBMs of the world, like we did at Mongo, or with the Datadogs and Splunks of the world, like we did at Grafana, you're probably not going to win distribution. So then you had better win on technology and innovation, and you'd better win on go-to-market execution. And I think the pace of innovation with this team and just the intelligence and intensity that the engineering team operates with was really motivating to me and fired me up. And then I think on the go-to-market side, I don't just mean running great process. I don't just mean having great PG fundamentals. Certainly all of that is super important. But I also think how you treat customers, how you engage, and really like you can't teach people to care. And I think the opportunity to build a go-to-market organization that not only operates in a way that allows us to win, but also like engages with customers and treats customers in a way that our customers want us to continue winning, made me really excited. And I think we got to do that at Mongo, we got to do that at Grafana, but the idea of getting to have the opportunity to go build that in AI ultimately was too exciting to not take a jump at.
Yeah, obviously you don't know what you walk into until you get your feet under the desk. But what are the early signs?
I think part of it for me was seeing how quickly they got traction. I mean, they started really going to market with the product in earnest in spring to early summer of 2020, and within 6 months had over 200 paying customers with like effectively a small number of salespeople and the founders doing all of the selling. And I thought that was really incredible. And then like also when you're early, it's hard to get case studies, right? And if you go and see some of the case studies on the website, Anduril, Dell, like companies that are publicly willing to talk about the work that they're doing, I thought was really exciting. Again, I think the free user base is hard to understate the value of because not only can people go and use it, but it just allows us to iterate the product so much more quickly. And then just starting to see, again, some of the quantifiable results I called out: 46% more code written per developer, 40 to 70% faster onboarding time. Another stat that I love and that it's one of my favorite things in the world to have people say, show me, is we're seeing anywhere from 7 to 10x ROI on the total cost of the investment back to the business. And anytime that you can take that and like take a go-to-market organization to market with that kind of value to customers, it's really exciting.
There is obviously the potential for this to be seen as a point solution. I know you've obviously kind of covered that there is a platform there, but how is that also translating in the potential size of engagement? You know, not necessarily talking about the specific numbers, but you are seeing sizable deals.
Yeah, and we're seeing sizable deals. I'll say like we did a deal in this quarter that at my last two companies would have been the largest deal in company history until about 100 million in revenue, which is amazing, right? We've got, can't say a specific number, but like more than a handful of 7-figure opportunities. And it's a really healthy mix, right? Because we're seeing there's a self-serve business that is really interesting and has a ton of velocity. We're up to over 500 enterprise customers on that. We have a healthy size of like $50,000 to $100,000 deals, and then we're seeing multi-100,000, 7-figure deals. And so anytime there's that kind of spread and there's pretty healthy velocity in all of them, and like obviously the deal length and the complexity varies a little bit, but it's just been really motivating and exciting to see so early on all of these different parts of a go-to-market organization getting traction and momentum pretty independently from each other. And the other thing to call out is I think a lot of folks right now are talking about LLMs, but even just seeing like the recent Llama 3 update and what we're hearing is going to come out with GPT. We do build our own LLMs. That's one of the pieces of what makes Codeium a little bit different than a lot of other companies is we're not just a GPT wrapper. We're not just pulling from Claude or Llama 3 or GPT or anything like that. However, one of the things that made me excited to come here was that we don't want to be an LLM company, right? At the end of the day, we are an AI application that wants to add value to developers. And so to have this approach of, yes, where it makes sense, we're going to build our own LLMs where that can add value. But ultimately, as the space evolves, as there continues to be a huge amount of investment in it, we want to meet customers where they are, not just in terms of the functionality of our product, but in terms of the models that they're able to use and bring to bear, right? And I think that having that kind of like open perspective on the right way to add value to customers, again, gave me confidence because there's obviously some really big players in the space who've taken a ton of money. And if I had sat down and they'd been like, yes, we're going to build our own LLMs and we're going to go try to battle OpenAI and Anthropic and all of these companies, that would have made me pretty nervous. I think hearing this story of wanting just to figure out how to add the maximal amount of value and do that in a way that meets people where they are while still ultimately being able to build best-in-class LLMs where necessary is a different story that I'm hearing a lot of people telling. And I think is one that feels aligned with where the market is going to go versus leaning into some of the hype cycles that we're seeing right now.
We are seeing a change in how customers are consuming. We are seeing a change in buying behaviors. How have you found working in Codeium? Are you seeing a shift? Are you seeing that customers are trying to buy in a different way? And how are you adapting to that?
Yeah, and I think this is not a crazy shift, but I think one of the things that this particular hype cycle has created is a huge amount of fatigue and skepticism very quickly. And so I think that there's a huge burden of proof on any company who's going in to provide an enterprise solution on like, great, you're telling us about all this value, quantify it, show us. And the cool thing is that yes, like we have this analytics dashboard, it's great, but we also have, I mean, a handful of customers that are in the Fortune 10 who are actively working with us on different ways to tie value back. And so I think that is maybe not super surprising, but something that's become really important early on is being able to get a directly quantifiable output on business value that they can then take back, because otherwise, why bother making the investment? There's so much noise. A lot of companies would be fine waiting or dabbling a little bit in some of the open source stuff that's out there. But I think we're seeing just a huge amount of emphasis put on being able to really quantify the value that a company is going to get and be able to scale that out. And again, I mean, that was one of the things that our founders leaned heavily on early. But I think that has been super, super critical. And like, we're even seeing customers go and say, hey, we're going to take some of the analytics that you guys are putting out, and we're going to tie those to things that are inside of our company. And then like, as we start to see that be consistent, a good example of that is you can take percentage code written, for instance, and tie that to PR cycle time. So saying, all right, like you have 50%, let's say in a given company, 50% percentage code written by Codeium. That's great. But we want to actually tie that to a base truth metric for us, which is PR cycle time, because there's a direct reference. We know what that costs. We know what a PR costs the business. So if we can take 50% and learn that there's a consistent 25% reduction in PR cycle time, that's a very specific metric that can be tied into a business case. And I think being able to bring that to customers, especially with AI, right now, for the most part, you're selling to the C-suite. Like this is a big enough priority. It's a big enough initiative at the executive level that in any deal of any major size, or even just because of the potential impact on the way that they think about development, you ultimately are going to end up either at the VP level, what we're seeing most often, ending up in the C-suite. And so just being able to really have concrete metrics that you're tied to is super critical. And then the other thing that people are worried about is security. There's a lot of noise right now about AI systems generating non-permissively licensed code. That is super scary to anyone that has major IP liability. And one of the things that we're really proud of is that we actually guarantee with how we train our models that we don't generate non-permissively licensed code. A lot of the competitors out there right now are SaaS only. We have talked to a ton of security teams who are like, yes, we're working with so-and-so, but we're not going to allow them to expand beyond larger than like 5% of our total estate because we're so nervous about all of this stuff that we can't go and put that code into production because we're not sure that it's going to be legally defensible. And I think we have a really unique perspective on that because both how we train our models and our deployment strategy, where we're willing to be self-managed, we're willing to be in an air-gapped environment behind a firewall, is differentiated. And I think those components right now, like the security piece, the business value piece, are important in a lot of sales. But I think in AI in particular, that has been a huge area that we've been able to add a lot of value. And then the final thing is that we're so early in this race, right? The AI journey is really just starting for most companies. You don't want to lean into a tool that's going to create some kind of lock-in. And Codeium, for instance, will work with any source code management tool. So whether you're using GitHub SaaS, GitHub Enterprise, Perforce, Bitbucket, GitLab, there's a lot of different options out there. And we think it's really important that we are able to work across any of those because we don't want customers to have to make decisions about source code management that are tied to the developer productivity AI application they're using. And there's other companies out there for whom it's a requirement to be on a given source code management tool. And so I'd say that is another piece is like, what are the second order effects of the decision that you're making today on how your engineering team is going to be able to operate 6 months, a year, 2 years out? And again, I think this really sort of maniacal focus on not limiting people in those decisions and still being able to use Codeium to its fullest extent has been a huge differentiator for us as we're talking to customers.
Amazing. What's the mission? What's the Codeium mission, Graham?
We want to give developers superpowers. I think from our perspective, especially in this era of really wanting companies being super focused on profitability and on a path to making money, our perspective is, hey, if we can go and give an organization with, it could be 500 developers, it could be 50,000, right? But give them the ability to generate more output, whether that's, again, going back to 46% more code written, 40 to 70% faster onboarding time, 7 to 10x ROI on the investment. Like, we want to be able to arm companies with the ability to, using their existing engineering teams, generate more product, more revenue, more value for their, if it's a public company, shareholders, if it's a private company, still shareholders, but just in a different way. And so I think we really want to give developers superpowers and make it so that a developer that today is sort of by default limited at 100% of their output might be able to generate 150 or in time 200% output. So you're able to see people basically as if you just gave someone a teleportation device. Suddenly the whole world gets much smaller. We're looking to create more powerful developers no matter where they are, whether that's on the free tier, on our self-serve tier, or certainly for our large enterprise customers.
Why should you're obviously looking to kind of expand the team? You're obviously going through growth at the moment. Why is this a great place to be part of right now?
I think I could do 20 minutes on that alone. I think the biggest things are when someone is looking at going to an organization, what you're looking to do is develop skills. So is there an enablement program in place that will make you better, not just at that company, but that will propel you through your career with the skills that you learn? We just hired an enablement leader who I am wildly excited about. And so I think we're going to have a program that will be similar to the greatest enablement programs ever. I still think MongoDB for me is the gold standard in what excellent enablement looks like. And I have every intent of building a program that has a similar impact on the people that come here as Mongo. So the opportunity to get better in a way that carries you through your career, the opportunity to advance based on the benefit that you contribute to the organization. And the great thing about being in a small organization is that there's a huge amount of opportunity here, because the reality is that we need people who want to build. And I think, and this is something that I learned at Grafana and Mongo before that, like I have a huge bias for promoting internally. And so for people that want to come here, and whether that looks like just becoming a strategic rep and having great accounts and being able to do that, it might look at getting into something outside of sales, or it might look like jumping into sales leadership. All of those opportunities are very much here. And I think having a culture of enablement that's very focused on investing in the people that are kind of inside of the organization and making that a talent center where we want to lean on the people that are within the organization should be super exciting to people. There's also the opportunity to bring a ton of value to developers. It's been so much fun to talk to our customers and get the feedback from them and to hear the impact it's having on the organization, to hear about people who feel like being a part of bringing Codeium in is helping them in their careers just because of how that's amplified what they're working on at company X. And then the final thing, and this is really obvious, but the opportunity to make money, right? And I think that we have a comp plan that I'm really excited about. We also have a really high bar for hiring. And I think most great people, whether you were in theater or music or sports, it's fun to do things that are fundamentally team oriented when you're with other A players, and building an organization that is super competitive, very supportive of each other, team oriented, and where everyone comes in every day and feels like they want to be at their best just to belong is something that gets me really excited. It was why I loved my previous two stops, and something that I think we're doing a really good job building here at Codeium. So I would say that is another reason that people should be excited to come here. Is so overall, opportunity for career advancement, opportunity to get better, opportunity to make really good money and make great connections, and opportunity to add a ton of value to our customers.
So Graham, there's a lot of noise around the artificial intelligence space at the moment. There's lots of organizations, coming out the woodwork. Based upon your experience in choosing Codeium, is there any advice that you can give to our audience around any additional procedures or, parts of your process that you went through to validate that you were making the right decision?
Looking at the organization, right? Who are the leaders? Who are the people that you're relying on from a decision-making perspective? Who do they have around them? I've been super impressed with our VCs. We've worked with Green Oak since our Series A. They've been amazing. Kleiner Perkins has a really unique approach as far as how they add value on the go-to-market side. And so folks like Chubin, Liam, Lauren on their go-to-market team have been really, really helpful. And I think getting to talk to them as I was going through the interview process and hear how they thought about making that investment. And then Lee Marie at Kleiner is the woman who led the investment. And I've just been blown away by the amount of support that we're getting. So who is the executive team? How do they make decisions? Who are the investors? Who are the advisors? What does the space look like? Again, I called out earlier, not wanting to create lock-in, wanting to make sure you could meet customers where you are. And like to me, that's comfortable. I've spent the last 8 years of my career in open source. So this idea of wanting to meet people where they are and work with them on that level was really appealing to me. But some other folks might be more comfortable with a more closed system. And I think there is a lot of that in AI right now. And so for me, it was just figuring out what I was the most comfortable with and going in that direction. And then I think on the go-to-market side, you just have to be aligned with the philosophy, right? I wanted to make sure that coming over, we wanted to have go-to-market be a differentiator for us in the market, both like how we operate as an organization around pipeline generation, around process, but also how we treat customers and how we engage with customers. I have a really, I'd say, clear and specific view of what great looks like to me. And so for me, it was making sure that that was aligned with the founders and the other people that I'd be working with in the organization. And then I think the final thing too is just looking at the way a company approaches growth. I appreciate really deeply the level of, I'd say, realism, probably bordering on skepticism sometimes, that our team looks at creating value, where we want to make sure that we're not ever saying something that we can't back up, that we can't quantify, that we're really, if anything, being a little bit conservative with our estimates so that we can go out and over deliver on what we promised. And I think that in AI right now, every couple of weeks, there's a demo that makes it look like we're suddenly going to automate away the entire world. And I think that anyone who is seeing something like that should make sure that they're digging in and asking hard questions, because in a lot of cases, it seems like some of the things that get a lot of hype for a week or two maybe aren't there yet. And that's not to say that they won't be in 5 years and 10 years, but I think it's just really important to ask hard questions around the actual value being derived from customers. And then I'd say the final thing is to look at the way that a company wants to grow. I think, we've seen some stories in the last couple of years where companies might have gotten a little bit of early traction, but then grew in a way that wasn't sustainable or maybe wasn't totally aligned with where they were in the market. And I think we're going to see more of that in AI. Just some of the rounds that we're seeing where companies are raising an outrageous amount of money pre-product means that I think we are probably going to see a couple more of those stories. And so I think for anyone who's looking at getting into the space, being able to do some pattern recognition. So like where have we seen this before? And is there a likelihood of it happening again? And also just being able to take a deep breath and maybe not allow yourself, if you're looking at getting into the AI world, to get taken away with some of the hype unless you really talk to people that are saying, hey, like these are the customers that are deriving value from it. Here's how we're doing it on a consistent, repeatable basis. Because again, I think there's a lot of amazing things happening in AI. There's a ton of incredible companies, but there's also just so much noise and so much investment that I think it would be easy to make a decision that in retrospect is maybe not the best one, just based on what you're seeing on LinkedIn or Twitter.
Your role at Grafana Labs obviously went from early stage startups all the way through to scale up, and now you're finding yourself back in a startup organization. Is there anything that you've learned about yourself through this process?
Yeah, no, I mean it's a great question. I think for me, what I'm learning is that I love the process of like finding the right things. It's different at every company, right? What worked at a Mongo and at Grafana won't work exactly at Codeium. And mind you, there's a lot of pattern matching, right? I think in general, part of why you see someone like a John McMahon who has this amazing legacy, and why so many companies have been successful running a version of the playbook, is that there are a series of base truths in that program that will work for almost anywhere. But I also think it's fun to go back to somewhere small and to figure out what are the things from a sales stage, sales process, how do we PG, what does the value messaging look like, how do we engage with customers throughout discovery, validation, in the negotiation, that is a little bit different. And so I think the building and the problem solving piece is really fun. I also think that, one of the things that a lot of people on this show have said is you have done a good job building an organization when you leave, and that organization is at least as good and ideally even better because you've set something up that by the time you step out is ready to keep going without you. It might even accelerate. And so I think, at Grafana, certainly we did that. They're a brilliant company and they're going to continue to have a tremendous amount of success. I think at Codeium, it's fun to take all those lessons, because certainly I made mistakes and learned lessons at Mongo that I took to Grafana. And certainly there was a ton that we did really, really well at Grafana and will continue to do well. But I also made a bunch of mistakes there. And I think just getting to continue to build on that and to learn from them has been really fun. And so the opportunity to go back and to create another great go-to-market organization where I'm sure we'll make new and interesting mistakes on this go around, but being able to take those lessons and like an example for me is we're really early, right? We have fewer than 10 sales reps right now. So why this maniacal focus on enablement? Well, because I think if we get that right before we hit hyperscale, then there's a better opportunity to have a more predictable outcome, not just for the people that we're bringing in who we really want to be successful, but also for the forecasting of the business and for all of the for all of the reasons that I wanted to build a scalable, sustainable model. And that's something that, frankly, I've never seen done at any company I was at. I think enablement was always something that became prioritized eventually, but I am not aware of a company that's put as much effort into building an enablement program at, sub 50 people at the company as we have. And there's a huge amount of just the lessons I've learned from my previous stops that's tied to that philosophy. I think similarly, rev ops or sales ops or whatever you want to call it is another thing that we're really focused on, because I think companies that use data really well are able to scale that in the right places, get the right information in front of their go-to-market team so they can act on it at the right time. But that's another thing that I think I see most companies do later stage when they realize it's really important. And I think at Codeium, we have an opportunity to be great at those two things early. And now, mind you, other stuff that I hadn't thought of will break. But I think taking all of those lessons and being able to enact them is fun, and just getting to kind of continuously build on the lessons from the past for me is it's nice to be able to look back and say, hey, this is where we did much better. Here's what we've learned, and here's where we've evolved. And here are the things that, as I come across this in the future, I'm going to do a little bit differently based on what we just saw.
So you were very loyal to Grafana Labs, and choosing to leave an organization is always a tough decision. What was the process that you went through to actually detach yourself from Grafana Labs and actually make the leap of faith and join Codeium?
Yeah, I think it's different company to company. I think I give like Raj, Grafana CEO, and Dave, who's Grafana CRO, a ton of credit. Like when I went to them, was probably one of the conversations I've been most nervous for in my adult life, and they were great. I mean, I'd been there for 5 years and a quarter at that point. And I think when you work with people for that long and you build something really amazing and you kind of have the ups and the downs of that, there's a really close bond and relationship there. And both of them were super supportive, because obviously at that point, you're kind of looking at two different journeys. One is to continue on this scale journey where they're moving towards some kind of outcome, whatever that might look like for that business. And there was the opportunity to continue being there and to continue learning how to operate at scale and learning all of the lessons that come from that. And there was never a point where I wasn't having a lot of fun, right? But both of them said, listen, this is apples to oranges. There's this opportunity and we'd love to have you. And then obviously if you're excited by going early again, building something from scratch, being kind of the guy in the go-to-market organization, that's just a totally different adventure, not really something that's comparable to operating in a business that's going from 1,300 to 2,000 to 3,000 and beyond people. And so I think I'll give Grafana a lot of credit, because I've heard very different stories elsewhere. I think it was just like an honest conversation about what was going to excite me most, not maybe in the next 12 months, but in the next 2 to 5 years. And so they were super supportive of me figuring out the right thing for me. And listen, I'm still their biggest fan. I'm still very emotionally attached to their outcome, but I think it was a really good demonstration of the leadership of that company to, after, a 5-year run like that, have them be so supportive of me figuring out what was going to excite me going forward and ultimately supporting that decision. So hopefully for anyone listening, that's the experience they have. But I've also heard some very different stories. And I think that maybe that experience and that perspective is a little bit unique to Grafana in my experience.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Graham. Really, really looking forward to sharing this to the network and to the community. But for any listener that is interested in finding out more about Codeium, we here at Hunters and Unicorns have joined in a strategic recruitment partnership with Codeium to now help them scale up. If anybody is interested to find out more, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Simon. But again, to all our listeners, please do subscribe to our various channels on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and LinkedIn. All the links will be in the description below. But again, we look forward to welcoming you back to another session very soon. All the very best and have a great day.